Aya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Vallabha Girivara Aya Gopijana Vallabha Girivaradari Vallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Rajajana Yashodanandana Rajajana Ranjana Rajajana Yamunatita Vanadari Anam Yamunatita Anacha Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Vallabha Girivara Yashodanandan Rajajana Ranjana Rajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Vanachari Jai Vishnupad, Paramahamsa Piripada Kitaya, Stota Stata Shishimada's Divine Grace, Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad, Paramahamsa Piripada Kitaya, Stota Stata Shishimada's Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Swami Mahaprabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai, and Thakur. Reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, chapter entitled Beyond the Lower East Side. Anyway, we went back upstairs to our seats, and Burton Green came right up to Swamiji saying, Swamiji, are you happy? Are you comfortable? Do you like it? And Swamiji was very polite and said yes. Then Burton said, now the second part is coming. I interrupted and tried to say that Swamiji is very tired, and he takes rest at 10. It was already after 10, so I said we had to go back. But he pressed Swamiji to stay for the second half, and so we had to stay. Then the poets came out and recited poetry. We were there until 11:30, and then we had to ride back on the subway. But a few weeks later, I learned that Prabhupada had another reason for going to town hall. He was thinking of renting it for a temple, and he wanted to see it. The Gate Theater was a small auditorium on 2nd Avenue about 10 blocks north of the storefront, Satswarup. We entered the Gate Theater for one night. It was a dark place, painted all black. The theater was almost empty. We had an easel on stage with a painting of the Panchatattva. Swamiji spoke, and his talk became very technical. Pointing and referring back to the painting, he described each member of the Panchatattva. He first explained that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, appearing as a pure devotee. Lord Nityananda, to the right of Lord Chaitanya, is his first expansion, and to the right of Lord Nityananda is Advaita, who is the incarnation of the Supreme Lord. To the left of Lord Chaitanya, he said, is Gadadhar, the internal energy, and Srivas is the perfect devotee. During the talk, I was thinking that this was maybe too elevated for the audience, but I was sitting close beside Swamiji, and like the other devotees, I was really enjoying being with him. After the gate engagement, Swamiji and his disciples agreed that it was a waste of time trying to rent theaters. It was better to go to the Tompkins Square Park. That was the best place for attracting people, and it didn't cost anything. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Sarvashashtabdi Piyusa, Sarvavedaka Satpala, Sarvasiddham Paratladya, Sarvalokaikadritpada, O nectar of the ocean of all scriptures, single food of all the Vedas, rich mine of precious gems of all conclusive truths, you're the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu, Kalidvantadida Vidya, Shri Krishna. All supreme most devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you're the sun risen in the darkness of Kali, you're the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya, Prema Vakshiksharayate, Sarvada Sarvasya, Shri Krishna Namostame. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read, hear every syllable pulls down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone in Sri Krishna himself. Hare Kabando Matsangam, Madguro Madmahadana, Manishtaraka Madbhagya, Madanana Namostame. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master. My good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Sadhu sadhu tadaya, Hanuman chakada chinman, prema hit kuntarospara. All bestower of Satan list to the unsaintly, all exalted the most fallen. Please never leave me, always appear in my heart, my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from 4th Canto, Chapter 28, entitled Puranjana Becomes a Woman in the Next Life. Text number 18. Lokantaram Gatavati Mayanata Kutumbini Vartishyate Katam Tvesha Balakan Anusochati Lokantaram Gatavati Mayanata Kutumbini Vartishyate Katam Tvesha Balakan Anusochati Lokantaram Gatavati Mayanata Kutumbini Vartishyate Katam Tvesha Balakan Anusochati Loka Antaram, into a different life. Gatavati Mayi, when I am gone. Anata, bereft of a husband. Kutumbini, surrounded by all family members. Vartishyate, will exist. Katam, how? To, then. Aisha, this woman. Balakan, children. Anusochati, lamenting about. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Translation. King Puranjana was anxiously thinking, alas, my wife is encumbered by so many children. When I pass from this body, how will she be able to maintain all these family members? Alas, she will be greatly harassed by thoughts of family maintenance. Report. All these thoughts of one's wife indicate that the king was overly engrossed with the thoughts of women. Generally, a chaste woman becomes a very obedient wife. This causes a husband to become attached to his wife, and consequently he thinks of his wife very much at the time of death. This is a very dangerous situation, as is evident from the life of King Puranjana. If one thinks of his wife instead of Krishna at the time of death, he will certainly not return home back to Godhead, but will be forced to accept the body of a woman and thus begin another chapter of material existence. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, Puranjana, the allegory, is coming to an end. A few of these verses will describe his departure from the body. Now, when we hear this verse, it sounds like Puranjana is having a noble thought. He is considering the welfare of others upon his departure, namely the welfare of his wife, who he had maintained for his whole duration with her. But Prabhupada says, no, this is not a very good thing. And that is because at the time of death, ante narayana smriti, one should be thinking of God. So generally, in every relationship, we live a life of reciprocation. The more that a reciprocation is there, the more that the attachment increases. And so with husband and wife, there's a lot of reciprocation. They actually should be servants of one another. There was a couple devotees of husband and wife who went to see a sannyasi, a visiting sannyasi. They had some trouble in their marriage, so they went to get some advice. So they asked the sannyasi, we're arguing all the time. Can you please give us some advice? So the sannyasi, he told the husband, you should see yourself as the servant of your wife. And he told the wife, you should see yourself as the servant of your husband. So then they went back home and they began to argue again. So then the wife told the husband, didn't you hear? Maharaj said you're my servant. And the husband did the same. Didn't you hear? He said you're my servant. So they began to argue like this. So real dharma is actually household life. A person should be the servant of the rest of the family. And then the relationship works very well. If the wife becomes the servant of the husband, it's described that she can become very powerful. The Puranas give a story of a sinful Brahmana. He's a son of a Brahmana. And he had leprosy. But his wife was very devoted to him. And so at one point he desired to engage with a prostitute. So his wife, being such a servant of her husband, she wanted to fulfill even that desire. So she actually became the servant of this prostitute to try to catch her attention so she can enjoy with her husband. Finally, after some time, the prostitute agreed, and so she was bringing her husband to enjoy with her. But on the way, the husband finally clicked. How could I do this? My wife is so devoted. She served me without any compromise, without any selfish motive. I should give it up and become devoted to her, serve her in the same way. So he gave up that desire, and they were returning back on their journey. But on the way, he touched the body of Markandeya Rishi. And because he has leprosy is very contagious, Markandeya Rishi became very upset, and he cursed the Brahmana that when the sun rises, you will die. So it's described there that this wife, she became so powerful by her chastity that she vowed to stop the sun from rising. And she caught the attention of the three predominating deities, Vishnu, Shiva, and Brahma. And they came to her and they said, don't worry, allow the sun to rise. We will bring your husband back to life. We will also cure him of leprosy. So this story is instructive, not just that the wife should serve the husband and the husband should serve a wife, but this story is actually told in the Chaitanya Charitamrita in relation to the Shikshashtaka prayers. And there Prabhupada describes that this story and this example exemplifies how a devotee should serve the Supreme Lord without any selfish motives. Because Krishna is the real husband, he is the pati. He is the real maintainer, he is the object of love. This is what Rukmini prays as well in the Krishna book. Jivachavam bhajati kanti matir vimuda yete padabjamukaranda majigrati stri. She says that actually all women should only accept you for a husband. And if they have heard and tasted the honey emanating from your lotus feet, they will not accept anybody else as the real husband. You see, Krishna, he wanted to enjoy some loving quarrel with Rukmini. She was known to be very submissive. And so he wanted to see if I can get some loving anger out of her. And so he began to speak in a way that will agitate her. He told her, I don't know why you married me. You had so many qualified kings that wanted you, Shishupal, Dantavakra, many others. But instead you chose me. Nobody knows my background. Nobody knows if I'm a cowherd or a Vaishya. Am I the son of Nanda Maharaj? Am I the son of Vasudev? All my devotees are very poor. I leave them bereft of my association in the pain of separation. So actually, you should leave me and find another husband who's qualified for you. So after speaking like this, Rukmini, she became very shocked. She dropped the fan that she was serving him with. Her body began to tremble. It's described that she became very thin, that the bangles from her arm fell off. She was looking at the ground and scratching the floor with her toenails. And then finally she collapsed. And upon collapsing, Krishna realized she didn't respond in the way that I expected. So he manifested 4 arms. He picked her up with 2, and he fixed her hair with the other 2. And he told her, I didn't expect you to do like this. Don't you know that in household life, joking words are the real goal of this association? This is the real nectar that people relish in household life. So she became pacified, understanding that Krishna is not going to leave her. And then she began to rebuttal all the statements that he made. She described that all these kings that you say are more qualified than you are nothing but insects in your presence. And they have a body made of skin, hair, nails, and filled with blood, flesh, stool, bile, and air. And only a foolish woman will accept such a king as a husband. And she described in the households of such women, these kings are just like asses because they work very hard. They're like bulls because they're always fatigued. They are like dogs because they're inimical to others and protective of their property. They're like cats because they're selfish and eat the remnants of their wives. And they're like slaves because they have sold their soul to such materialistic activities. So there, Rukmini says that the only husband that should be accepted is Krishna himself. Of course, one may say that in a spiritual world also, ladies have husbands, men have wives. But the center, the sinecure, the word Prabhupada uses, the center of all attraction there is Krishna himself. And so those relationships are not detrimental, they are progressive. They are there for Krishna's pleasure. And even in this world, devotees, they enter that ashram. Actually, Prabhupada, he says in one place that all women should get married and all men should be brahmacharis. Try to figure that one out. So who should we dedicate our life to? That is Krishna. Nonetheless, while we're in this world, we live according to Dharma. And there are many women who have become very exalted by their devotion to their husband. A famous one is Gandhari, who Prabhupada brings up repeatedly. She was known as a very powerful woman. She's an ascetic. In one place, Prabhupada says that she was as good as Bhishma Dev in character. Gandhari, she was going to marry Dhritarashtra, and she found out that he was blind. And so she decided, I cannot become greater than him. So she voluntarily blindfolded herself for her entire life. And by that austerity, she became very powerful. Once she had a miscarriage, actually, by her own doing. And she was devoted to Vyasadeva. So when she gave birth to a lump of flesh, she wanted some male children. And so Vyasadeva instructed her, you can chop up this lump of flesh into 100 pieces. And it's described every piece became a male son. And they were headed by Duryodhana. Later on, when Duryodhana was going to fight Bhishma, because it said that whoever she laid her eyes on, their whole body will become as strong as iron. So Duryodhana was known to be very skilled, much more skilled than Bhima, but Bhima was much more strong. And so Gandhari, she told Duryodhana, in the morning, when you come to pay your obeisances to me, you come naked. And when I glance at you, your whole body will become iron, and then you'll become just as strong as Bhima. So Krishna found out this was going to happen. So in the morning when Duryodhana was going to see uh, Gandhari, Krishna told him, "What are you doing? You're going naked to see your mother?" He said, "At least you should cover your private parts. This will be a bit more proper." So Duryodhana became bewildered, and he said, "Yes, this is right." So he put on some cloth, and then he went to see his mother. And his mother, obviously, as soon as she saw him, she took off her blindfold. She was upset. She said, "Why did you do this? I told you to come naked." And he said, "Oh, well, Krishna told me." And immediately she smiled, and she knew Krishna has foiled the whole plan. So his whole body became as strong as iron, but his hips were just as normal. And so during the fight with Bhima, that went on for quite some time, Krishna finally gave the hint that you should strike him on the waist. And that's how Bhima finished the battle. So Gandhari is there and as an example, Queen Rukmini of as well, Kunti Devi was an exalted devotee. And by that devotion, they conquered the Lord, and of course, they conquered their husband by following the Sri Dharma. Now, here we hear that Puranjana is remembering his wife, and that is due to her reciprocation to him. Krishna says, as we know, Yam Yam Vapi Smaram Bhavam Tajantante Kalevaram. That whatever you remember at the time of death, that state you'll attain without fail. I'm sure many devotees have quoted this verse in relation to this pastime. So the word bhava uh, means the investing of the heart. In other words, if a person is investing their heart in household life for their entire duration of life, then at the time of death, that is what they will remember. Even if we are devotees, if our devotion is mechanical, but our heart is invested in material activities, we will remember that where our bhava is lying. So it's not what we do mechanically every day, it's what we do with our heart. So therefore, we're often told all the activities of devotion should be done with feeling, should be done with investment, thinking of Krishna, who says, Mayarpito manabuddhir, with your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you should think of me. Krishna also uses the word priti, devotional service, priti purvakam, should be done with love. So the example is there of Bharat Maharaj, who gave up everything. He gave up his household life, his kingdom, but he invested his bhava in a deer. And so he fell in love once again. He would walk with the deer, he would lay down with it, he would kiss the deer, he would scratch it when it itched. He would even eat with the deer. And he would fear for it. And when he was doing his puja, he would be thinking, I wonder what's happening with the deer. So he would intermittently stop his worship to go check on it. He would be meditating and he was thinking, what am I doing here? I'm just faking it. I should go consider what the deer is up to. So he was doing his worship, he was doing his practice, but where was his heart lying? It was with the deer. And so at the time of death, after maintaining the deer for so long, he took the body of a same form. So that was reciprocal. The deer also showed a lot of affection to Bharat Maharaj, and so he fell for it. He was considering, I am the maintainer of this deer, what will it do without me? Which is another misconception Puranjana is having here. He's thinking, my wife, what will she do when I'm gone? Who will take care of her? It's true, the husband is supposed to maintain. In Kali Yuga, it's not easy. The Bhagavatam says that if a person can maintain one wife and a couple of kids, he's be considered daksha, expert. But when a person does maintain like that, then the attachment is very great. In Vedic culture, even today in India, it's described that some statistics were done of where is the world's gold located. And it's said that 11% of the reservoir of gold within this planet is owned by Indian housewives. They own more than America, Germany, and some bank that lends money to 190 countries. So their husbands are maintaining them very nicely. And so they are, you can say, more submissive than Western Matajis who don't have any gold. um, so they're maintained, and they also maintain the household. It's a reciprocal relationship. But when you maintain that much, when you give somebody that much gold, when you provide everything for them, and then their heart also becomes invested in you, then there's a misconception. I am the doer, I am the maintainer, everything belongs to me. And so now he's leaving his body and he's thinking, what will happen to her? He's not seeing. He's thinking, I am Sarvakarna Karnam, which we know is Krishna's position. He's the cause of all causes. You see, for a devotee, we realize that yes, there's an immediate cause. Maybe my boss, maybe the grocery store that has the fruits and vegetables there. Maybe the person who gives me some immediate benefit. But we understand that there is a remote cause, which is Krishna himself. So many times, like we meet people on the street and we tell them we are brahmacharis, we serve the Lord, this is what we do. So immediately they ask, probably practically every other day, so where do you get your money from? How do you maintain yourself? How do you live? And so for a while, I used to tell them, we get some donations from our books distribution. We also distribute prasad. We have very generous donors who support our work. But then I realized they asked this question because of a misconception and over anxiety about maintenance. And so now I just answer them with what Prabhupada said. The ant and the elephant, they're both eating and they do not worry. So if I am serving God with all my heart, why won't he maintain me? So obviously, sometimes they don't accept that. Oh, you're giving me some smart answer. But it's actually the truth. And this is the devotee's conviction. And so Prahlad Maharaj, he says like this, that even if the immediate cause is there, often the result is not achieved. So he says, Balasya neha sharanam pitaro nasimha nartasya chagadam udanvati maggato no. That sometimes we see that there's a child and they're being cared for very lovingly by their parents, but still the child dies. And sometimes we see there's a patient and they have much medical facility and medicine and doctors, but still they do not survive. And sometimes we see that there is a very sturdy boat, but the person drowns. So he says, my dear Lord, from this we can understand that persons who are not cared for by you can never achieve any benefit. So we see that actually who is the maintainer? It is Krishna. He is giving us what we need through many different ways. And as the saying goes, if God wants to give you with 10 hands, how much can you take? He will give you everything. And if God wants to take from you with 10 hands, how much can you stop him from doing that? So for a devotee, we are confident in Krishna. We hear of Srivas Thakur, who was living very opulently, apparently. He had kirtans in his house every day. He had a big house, he had a big family. And so Mahaprabhu one time he asked him, Srivas, I see you're not working. You're just doing kirtan all the time. How do you maintain yourself? So Srivas Thakur, he just clapped 3 times. So Mahaprabhu said, please explain. It was an equivocal statement. What do you mean by that? So Srivas clapped once and he said, if one day the Lord doesn't provide, we will fast. Clap the second time. The second day, nothing comes, we will also fast. He said, the third day, if the Lord doesn't provide for us, we will just all go take shelter of the Ganges and drown, and that'll be the end. In other words, The Ganges will maintain us. It will maintain me in Vaikuntha, where there's no anxiety over anything. So Mahaprabhu was very pleased by this, Shivasa's confidence in the Supreme Lord. So in death or in life, Krishna is our maintainer. It's described that, yes, death will come, but for a devotee, for a brahmachari, it's said that better a brahmachari dies immediately, because they're living a life of austerity and their destination is going to be very great. For a king or a materialistic enjoyer, better to live, because currently they're enjoying, but their destination is not going to be very good. They have to suffer reactions for all of that. Disregard of the main proprietor and the main enjoyer. And for a sinful person, a mischievous person, better not to live and not to die, because they are living a horrible life now and they will suffer in the future. But for a devotee can live or a devotee can die, it doesn't matter. In life or death, they are under Krishna's shelter. Nonetheless, we do have to remember death, because it's an impetus. It can help us to become more serious in our practice. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he says that once you remember two things, the holy name of the Lord and death. By that remembrance, by that jnana, then one becomes detached. Vairagya Vidya Nija Bhakti Yoga. Mahaprabhu came to give that. Shikshashtame Kapurusha Purana, Shri Krishna Chaitanya Sharira Dari, Kripambudi Yastamaham Prapadye. Mahaprabhu came to give knowledge, detachment, and devotion to himself. So yes, that knowledge helps us to become more detached, to become more serious. And death is very uncertain. We don't know what will happen at the time of death. So we have to be prepared. There's the famous prayer of Maharaj Kulashekar, which Prabhupada liked to sing. Kulashekar, he wanted to die immediately because he thought, when death comes, my throat will be choked up. I will not be able to chant your name. So he sang a very beautiful prayer. Krishna Tvadiya Padapankaja Panjarantam Adyeva Te Vivashatu Me Advaiva Te Vishatu Me Manasa Raja Hamsa Prana Prayana Samaye Kapavata Pittai Kandavarodana Vidosmaranam Kutaste. That, my Lord, allow my mind, the swan of my mind, to enter into the stem of your lotus feet, now when I am in good health. But if I have to wait until the time of death, I do not know what my destination will be. So this was his constant remembrance of the Supreme Lord, and this is what we want, to ultimately go back home, back to Godhead. So we have attachments, we have engagements in this world, and that's okay. But as long as those attachments are secondary and complementary of our devotional service, then the goal will be there. So to conclude, yes, that's what we want, attachment to Krishna. As another great devotee of the Lord, Queen Kunti prays, Tvayi me nanya vishaya matir madhupate sakrit ratim udvahatam adda gange vogam udanvati. O Lord of Madhu, as the waters of the Ganges forever flows to the sea, uninterrupted, please allow my devotion to be directed to you without being diverted towards anyone else. So these are just some things I can think of. And if anybody has questions or comments, I'll take them now.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Haribo.
Such a nice presentation of the text 18. Short and sweet and very, very accurately you mentioned how the direction of life should be, with so many examples, right from how to become the servant of the servant, as an example of the husband and wife, and that leads to so many examples of Rukmini, Gandhari, Kunti Devi, Bharat Maharaj. This all leads to the one thing, that what do you think of during the day, during the working time, and that leads to our ultimate destination. So it is very, very necessary to become a practiced person during our lifetime, so that our unidirection only remains Krishna. All other things should be secondary, but primary goal is Krishna. Then only we may achieve the desired goal of life. And that is what actually Puranjana is lacking of. They are just concentrated about the family matters and his wife, children, relatives, where it is individual or centralized or as a whole, but the underlying things is he has forgotten that the ultimate remembrance of Narayan should be the goal of life. That's why Ante Narayan Smriti is most important. The rest, everything will be secondary. So that lesson gives us a very pinpoint of this text. What we do practice throughout the life, that will destine our fate at the end of our life. So that's a Srila Prabhupada has given set of engagement in our life, so that we remain engaged in the remembrance of Krishna throughout the day, throughout the life, so that at the end we get the right destination before we leave this world, after we leave this world. So it's a very, very it's a cautious notice for all of us to understand the deeper meaning, what should be our goal of life, and how we maintain our material life along with the spiritual life. It to be balanced in such a way that primary goal is to be priority and secondary will automatically taken care of by the Lord mercy. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Dandavad pranams, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhu, just now when you were mentioning in the class about the initial points about how a husband and wife should basically know that their activities should dovetail towards Krishna consciousness. Just this pastime came across my mind, so I thought if I could share it. Is basically Srila Gora Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj had a follower whose name was Shambhu Babu, and Shambhu Babu accepted a wife and he got married. And when he came to see Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj and offered his obeisances, Maharaj actually told him that it's good that Shambhu Babu is married now. And he gave an instruction to him saying that, Shambhu, you should understand that your wife is Krishna's maidservant. She will give pleasure to the senses of Krishna and not to your senses. And you should see her as the Krishna's maidservant, a Vaishnavi, and that she's meant to give pleasure to the senses of Krishna. So every day you should offer obeisances to her and take her remnants because she's a Vaishnavi. And I think I read an article by Sri Gaur Govinda Swami Maharaj where he was saying that the system for a Vaishnava family is that early in the morning, both husband and wife should get up and offer each other's obeisances, and not only to each other, but to all the family members, because so that we will understand that we are actually performing our duties for the pleasure of the Lord and not for our senses. I just want to add that point.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, we are living in an ashram and we have devotees all around us. And similarly, in a devotee family, it's the same. It's devotee association. And so by that camaraderie, by that affection to one another, as you said, everyone is a devotee. And so a lot of benefit is there. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you, Prabhu. If there are no further questions or comments, then we can bring the class to a close. Thank you so much, Prabhu. Vancha kalpatrupyascha
कृपासिन्धुभ्यश्च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो
नमो नमः.
Bhagavati Vaishnava ki jai.
जय माधुर्य प्रभु की जय
Ki jai. Gaur Premanande